Welcome back to Motorsport and Scale. In this episode, which will be episode 2 of the Maserati build, I'm going to talk a little bit, we're going to go into a bit of dry fitting, some of my strategy that I employ around, how I plan out my build, rather than jumping straight into the build as per the instructions. Although I have talked about that a little bit. As we've seen through looking at the parts, although they're well designed, extremely well detailed, often there's no guarantee of a really good fit. So you got to be a little strategic in the way you plan your builds. They actually recommend to completely dry build the kit before you paint anything. I don't know if I'd go to that full extent, but I will pre-build some sections to ensure that it's going to fit well with other things, specifically the body. I find that that's the most critical part. Obviously, it's what you see at the end of the build is the body. So finding out if you got fit issues at the beginning is, in my opinion, the best way to go about that. So in order to do that, what I usually do is I'll go through the instructions and I will try to identify the major sort of sub-assemblies of the chassis that could potentially affect the overall fit of the body at the end. And then build up those sub-assemblies so that I can fit the body to ensure that it fits properly and then take any corrective action as needed. So just a quick run through, just to give you an idea of my thought process. I'll look through everything and not just looking at the body, but just looking at other sub-assemblies, how they'll interact with each other. I think, a good example here would be the engine sitting in the cradle. So the engine is eventually going to sit in the cradle here. It's going to sit on these tabs there. So when we go back to the engine assembly, we get the lower pan and then the engine mounts mount to it in step 2. So, if you follow the instructions and you just glue these in or however you decide to affix them to this, there's a possibility that they're not going to line up with the mounts on the subframe. So, in a case like that, I will try to figure out a way to mount the motor mounts to the chassis and then mount them to the motor and then attach them to the motor. And that will ensure that when it comes time to putting this whole built-up assembly in the chassis, it's going to fit. So that's one thing I'll look at for sure there. I can see here that the way that this is built up is basically we can build this sub-assembly, the front frame, and then the engine's just going to sit in it. It can be installed afterwards. So, here it's a little unclear if they're trying to put the motor in first and then the front suspension cradle, but I'll dry fit. I'll probably assemble this, dry fit it all, see if I can, what kind of clearance I have to install the engine after this is installed. Because in my eyes, building this subframe as one unit with the suspension cross member, not necessarily with the suspension on it, but doing that as a sub-assembly in itself, then installing the suspension and the motor afterwards would be probably the most strategic way of doing this, which would give you the best results because you can finish all your joints. I'd solder them in this case and paint it as one assembly. You wouldn't have any exposed joints or anything like that you have to deal with. So that's sort of the first thing I'm going to look at is that front frame assembly. And then I'm going to look at the rear frame assembly. And I can see here by looking at the instructions that, they're having you install the transmission, the transaxle, as you put the frame together. So I'm going to have to look at that carefully to see, because I don't really want to do that, obviously. I'd rather build this frame than put the transaxle in. Again, for the same rationale as the engine. It's cleaner and a little bit neater and probably easier in the end. So a little bit of thought will be around how this this assembly is going to fit in that one if I can build this up as a sub-assembly. Looking further through the instructions, when you come down to putting the top components of the frame in, you can see that it captures the transaxle, with the top mount. Essentially it sandwiches it in, so that's kind of showing me that I can't put, at the very least I won't be able to put this top piece on without the transaxle in. So again, we'll explore that. Then there's a couple of uprates here. I can probably attach I'm thinking I can probably build the lower part of the sub-assembly of the subframe, put these in, dry fit this top piece, probably combine the floor plan and the bulkhead, and potentially have that all installed as one unit. And then I can put the transaxle in, put the top mount, the top of the frame in, and that'll be the cleanest and neatest way of doing it. But in thinking about the body, obviously I'm going to need this, rear frame member built, temporary at least, the front one built, figure out a way to mount the engine, ensure that it'll mount, the motor mounts will line up. Those are some critical steps I'm going to have to figure out first before I get into building anything. Then looking further on, most of it now is just components that aren't really going to affect the fit of the body by the looks of it. So I think the strategy I'm going to employ is just building up the two parts of the frame, probably join them temporarily or in a non-permanent manner, and then I should be able to go on to fitting the body. Everything else are smaller sub-assemblies. The rear fuel tank, I'll probably need to get it all assembled and installed temporarily before I go and start fitting the body. So that's my strategy. That's what I'm going to do. That's what you'll see in this episode, is me working through that. Some of it I'll probably assemble permanently. Some of it will be temporarily. And at the end of the day, we'll have a frame built up, and we'll have the body fit, to check the alignment of all the body pieces. I'm super critical, or I'm super concerned about how the nose cone joins to the main body. With this joint here, just looking at it, there's not a whole lot of location, or not a whole lot to locate it to its corresponding part, to ensure that the the body lines are all matching and the contours are matched. So that's what I'm super interested about in the front, and same in the back. When we get to the back section, there's even less to help in alignment here on those two pieces. So that's what I'm really going to be looking at, I think, in this episode. So let's put the instructions away and let's get on the bench and see how we Alright, hey guys, a little check-in here. I've been working on getting the frame of the Maserati all together here. Yeah, and I just thought I'd check in, show you a little bit of my progress, talk about my approach, what I'm doing here. Essentially what I'm trying to do is get the frame together to a point where I can assemble the body on it, so I can get the body sorted out right away, instead of leaving that to last and everything that the body attaches to is finished. I don't like, working on doing rough work on one part with another finished component sort of attached to it. So that's kind of my strategy here. I know that kind of contradicts what I said earlier about the logical process laid out in the assembly manual is typically the best way to approach these kits, and that's still true. I am deviating a little bit, but what I'm doing is just looking at the sub-assemblies, pre-building some of that ahead of time, out of the order. But the actual assembly order, like when everything is done and they're coming together, the order that's in the manual is typically the best way to approach that. I find there are exceptions. Like, for example, on this assembly here, I can't put the gearbox in. If I got this assembly all together, I wouldn't be able to get the gearbox in here. It would be I might be able to finagle it in there. We'll see. I might leave this back component off only. You can see that's a separate one. It's just held on by the alligator clips right now. We'll see. Or I might actually cut out this piece right here. That might help facilitate putting the gearbox in after this is all assembled. One of the reasons I want to do that is, they have these lap joints for all the tubing, and they're kind of ugly. Like if you paint everything and then assemble it and just glue those joints after the fact, that joint's kind of ugly. Granted, most of these probably won't be visible, or you could approach it in a strategic way that, you leave the ones that you can need to assemble after everything's painted. You leave the joints that are going to be least visible, and those are the ones you do. So that's what I might be doing here. Like right now I have this all assembled, so that I can solder in this tube onto the bottom part of the frame here. I probably won't attach the top yet. I'm not sure if I can, like I say, do this as a full assembly and then get all the other components mounted to it. We'll see. I've got to do some trial and error, but for sure I'm gonna solder these two, top and bottom, or left and right. These other 6 joints, I guess. We'll see, like I said. So anyways, to get to this point, it's basically all these components are bent. So it's just a little bit of work, just, getting them straightened out, flattened out, squared up. So I do that to each sort of component, and then I start building sub-assemblies. Like, so far, I don't know if you can see it here. There's a solder joint here that I've made. There's a solder joint there, to attach this rear component. Once I get things soldered and I start building up the rest of the assembly, holding it square, squaring it up. A few things I use, like when I'm straightening, pipes, I just use a machinist straight edge, just as a nice hard flat surface to work on and to check the work. The tubes, it's pretty easy, to see if it's straight just with your eyeball. Getting things square and parallel, that's, a little bit more tricky, but it's quite remarkable how, easily that is to see, but I just use things like I got a little machinist square that I just use to ensure that the top and bottom assembly are in alignment. Nothing sort of swayed or back or forth. You know, just pretty basic, and just fiddling around with it until it all lines up. So that's ready to solder those two bottom ones, and then I'll figure out what my strategy is going to be. Like, ideally I want to have this assembled like this, but so I'll put this aside. That needs this piece, which is the floor pan, which slides inside of here, and then that's the firewall bulkhead, so that will sit inside there like that. So I'm not sure if I can do that. I should be able to just slide it in, and it dislocates on a couple pins. I should be able to do that one. That's no problem. This is just I just have the clamps on it to help get everything square and aligned. Once I got this all worked into shape, I will solder this all the way around. I think that'll set up for the best, the best finish and the best chances of it staying glued together. So that's this piece. The front of the chassis with the engine I've got done. This is all soldered together. I've got the motor mounted, installed in its cradle. This is the lower part of the engine assembly here in here. It bolts in. So there's 3 bolts holding in, 1, 2, 3. These motor mounts are separate to the engine and require attaching to it. So what I did here was I screwed the motor mounts in with the motor piece, the bottom of the pan here, installed as well, but nothing was glued or attached, permanently attached for the motor mounts. So once I had everything, or the motor mounts located and properly bolted down, then I came in, I don't know if you can see it, I came in from the inside, because the motor mounts have pins that go right through. So I came in from the inside and I soldered the motor mounts in place. So having it screwed down, bolted down, located where the motor mounts needed to be, and then affixing the motor mounts to the motor ensures that they're in the right location. And when it comes time to have the finished engine assembly, it's just going to drop in here. This will be a slight deviation from what the instructions say, because they basically say you build up this frame except for this front component, which is the suspension locating member. The upper and lower A-arms attached to there, and your springs are in there, and your shock absorber are all there. They say to put the engine in first and then put this front piece on, and I can see why. If you build the engine the way they say, with the bell housing and the flywheel on and the clutch, you have to insert the engine down in through, so it'll protrude through the back of this. It won't go down straight. But just a simple shift in assembly order, and I'll leave the bell housing and everything off of the engine, so it'll just drop straight in, so I can get the engine fully done, drop it in to a finished frame, which makes it cleaner, stronger. That's my main reason for doing it this way, is I want to, like you can see, I've soldered all these joints here, all this is soldered, the whole thing is soldered together essentially. So once this is soldered, it is solid. I could probably throw this across the room and the joints wouldn't fail. I'd bend the crap out of it, but it's solid. It's not going to fall apart. And ultimately that's what I want. I don't want 10 years down the road this is sitting on somebody's shelf and it starts to disintegrate because the super glue lets go or whatever you're using. To that end, I would ideally like to have you know, this chassis assembled as a sub-assembly, and to be able to solder these two pieces together, but I don't think I'm going to be able to. But the saving grace there is once you get the floor pan in this piece, marry the two together, it actually bolts together. There are bolts. They're just at the bottom though, which I wish there was something, another mechanical fastening means at the top, because levers and a lot of weight. You know, of course, when it's sitting on its base, it's fine because there'll be a compression force put on the top by the weight of the vehicle sitting on its base. But if you pick it up, that's where you might get, you know, a tensile force put on here, which this is now just a glue joint up here, and it could potentially bend. But the body also holds it all together, so I don't think it'll be that big of a deal. So just leaving those two to be screwed and glued together will be fine. Solder as much as I can though. I just think it's a cleaner way of doing it. You get nicer joints too, because I can finish the joint before I paint everything. I guess you could do that with gluing as well, but I just find this much more permanent method. And if you screw it up, the soldering, I think, I don't know if you've already seen a little montage of me soldering or not. If you haven't seen it yet, you will see it after this little talking point. It's quite easy. This stuff solders really well, I find. If you got the right kind of solder and the right kind of flux, you need an acid flux and low temp solder. And it's quite easy. And if you screw it up, you can undo it. It doesn't, you know, permanently alter the base material. It is soldering after all, so you're not melting the base material, it's not welding. So yeah. Anyways, I just thought I'd share that with you. That's where we're at. I'm going to carry on. Yeah, once I get all this soldered and then temporary held together, I'm not quite sure about this top piece, then I'm going to, you know, this is all I basically need to do, and then I will be able to mount the body, get it screwed in place and make sure everything's lining there, and then start on the body work. So that'll be exciting. So we'll get all the rough body work done first, and I can take the body off and then carry on with whatever I feel like working on at the time. Because once the body work's roughed in and the joints are fixed and you know, whatever needs to be done, then you can just work on the individual components not affixed to the chassis, and you can do the finish work. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. All right, we'll see you with the next update. Okay, so there we have it. I got the body all dry fitted and fitted up to itself. Everything went pretty good, actually. I won't say surprising, but yeah, kind of surprising for Model Factory Hiro. The three pieces fit together fairly good. There's some slight amount of work that's going to need to be going on here to get the panels flush with each other, but comparatively speaking, it's pretty good. There's no warpage, nothing funky going on with it, so fairly pleased with that. So to sort of back my way through this, show you how I've accomplished this, and yeah, so I guess first we'll just show you the underside. Everything is mounted. I got the frame all done, at least the major sub-assemblies. The two halves are dry fitted together. Well, they're screwed together. I think I was talking about that earlier, that I wasn't quite sure if that would be a good enough connection, but once everything is actually screwed in, once everything is glued together and screwed in, it's quite strong. And then, you know, you couple that, you got the body mounted on it, and it holds itself together pretty good, so I'm not too worried about it. This piece here obviously needs to be removed. That just is a bit of a stiffener they put in just so that the it doesn't warp. I'm going to turn that light down a bit. It seems not quite so good. Anyways, yeah, so as you can see, everything's fitting. My joints are all good here. There's nothing that holds this thing on at the back right now. It will have one screw that holds it to the fuel tank assembly, which pretty much takes up the whole back end of the vehicle. A little bit more on that later. The front component I don't have screwed in right now. When I had it screwed in, it actually was pulling it out of alignment, so I'm going to have to fill in the holes that were in the white metal. I'll probably just solder them closed, remark my centers and re-drill, and I might have to build some packing shims for where it you know, so it doesn't pull it down. That's what it was doing before, so I'm not quite sure on where those front sections sit yet. So obviously not quite on the home stretch on all this yet. I got to get the radiator built so I can test fit it, and I have to get the fuel tank built to get it test fit. But as it sits now, with the main body bolted on, the two end pieces on, everything lines up. So now I know that's all good. It's just a matter of getting the radiator to fit so it doesn't pull anything out of alignment, get the back end built and installed so it doesn't pull anything out of alignment, and I should be good. So yeah, we'll just show you how I accomplished all this. One thing, you know, pleasantly surprised but not surprised with Model Factory Hiro Fit and Finish, these two pieces, there's nothing really to align them or to hold them in alignment. There's a lap joint here and the one screw in the bottom. There's nothing to keep this from lifting up or pushing down or tilting back. It's left to your own devices to figure that out. Same with this. This is just a butt joint in the front with a lap built into it. And at the bottom, it's just a butt joint and then two screws holding it to the frame from the bottom, which again, you know, you tighten those up and it could push the whole nose cone up. It could tilt it down. Yeah, so not much to help you out on this one. So what I've done, I'll show you in the back first. I don't know if you can see that. There's nothing to support this right now, so it just sort of fell off when I took the tape away. But even without the tape, you can see that you know, these joints, they're quite nice. Everything lines up. There's no warpage, so that's good. So what I did to hold everything in alignment was I just, let's see if we can zoom in now a little bit. You know, I've drilled some holes and put some alignment pins in. So I did that on both corners. This one just stayed in the body here. So that one's there. Where the hell is that focusing? So there we go. So as you can see here, that's the lap joint that they give you. There's nothing to locate anything other than that. So if I just left it like that, there'd be nothing to keep this from going wherever. So that should work well. Those pins aren't glued in yet. I'll get them glued in on one side, and then when it comes time to assembly, it'll be just a matter of popping it together. So that fixed this part at the top. The other thing I did was on the side, I glued a piece of styrene along here. I'll put this back on. That essentially creates a little shelf right there. So this can't go down any further. Even though I got the pin there, it still helped keep everything in alignment. I'll just, a little bit of body work there. You'll never know that was added. So that's the other, I did that on both sides. So hopefully all that will help, and then once I get the fuel tank assembled and fitting properly, I'll just make sure that this bottom bolt doesn't pull anything out of alignment. So that's that part. So then on the front, similar strategy. So those pins I use on the back are 1 mil copper tubing. So on the front, you can see the joints, they're pretty good. You know, just a little bit of sanding to get them square. A little bit of misalignment on this side, you can see with the hood, so that will need a little bit of work there, but all in all, not too bad. So let's pull the tape off of here. This actually stays on by itself pretty good, this piece. Let's get this zoomed out a little bit more. Yeah, so I did similar strategy here. Let's just get this. This one, I got 2 pins at the bottom. I was going to do 3, but I probably will when I do the final. I was just having trouble getting them all 3 lined up at the same time, just for my dry fit purposes. So these ones are 1 mil. The resin's 2 mil thick here, so that worked out okay. And then here, that's these tubes that I put in are 1.6 mil diameter. So the bottom ones, like along here and the corresponding side here, they're easy to mark. You could just do a line, and then with my calipers I just measured the center and I described the center of the panel, with the bottom being the reference. Did the same here. Easy enough to get the holes lined up. The top was a little bit more difficult because there's no straight lines to reference. So what I did there was on the nose cone piece, I drilled some 1/2 mil pilots just where I figured I wanted the holes, and then I took some 1/2 mil brass tube or brass rod, sharpened it to a point and cut it so it fit in the hole and just protruded, you know, not even a millimeter, 1/2 mil out on both. And I did that to both, and then I installed it, got it lined up, and just used that to center mark the other side. So that all worked out well. So then we just got the center left. This tape doesn't actually need to be here, it's not doing anything. I was just using it to hold it together before I screwed anything together. So let me just take that apart quickly. Just pull the body off. Yeah, so this little bottom pan bolts to the chassis with 4 screws, and then another 4 screws bolt the pan to the body. For all the holes that these screws go into, whether it's the white metal or the resin, I tap them with a tap rather than run the screws through an undersized hole. I find it just a lot easier and less risky when you're running a screw into the white metal. You know, there's a probability they get quite tight. You know, if you drill a 1.2 mil pilot, these are 1.4 mil screws. So 1.2 would be the pilot hole size required. If you just run the screw into that, you can do it, but it gets really tight, and if you don't have a really good screwdriver, you run the risk of stripping the head of the screw out, and that would be a bad day. So, and then into the resin, you know, it can be done as well, probably be fine, but you know, you're forming threads at that point, and you're probably running the risk of cracking the resin. So I just tap them all. It's easy. I got a little tap set off Amazon for, I don't know, $30 for, and I think it was like 1.2 up to 2.4 mil. So super handy and not very expensive. So anyways, that's the way I do it. Yeah, so here's the chassis altogether. I think last we left it, I was kind of working on both pieces, and I was working on the fit of the floor pan into this piece on the back, and then the floor pan is actually what gets bolted on to the chassis. There's 2 screws there, and then you can't see them, they're underneath. There's another one there, and they bolted into the pedal boxes. So because there's 2 screws like that, or 2 sets of 2 screws, it means there's no twisting. It eliminates that rotational, the moment arm out of the thing. So that alleviated my concern originally that I think I talked about. So anyways, I got that all together. I soldered this to the floor pan. There was little tabs there that you can glue. There's little pins on the bottom of this X, and then like little dimples that are raised up on the floor pan to mount it all. But I found that, just a bit of crazy glue or super glue to hold that on wouldn't be that effective. It would have been cleaner. Like here, because I've soldered it, you can see down here, you got the fillet of the solder in these spots, but ultimately this is going to be super strong, which is what I want. Because if this floor plan breaks away from the frame, the rear frame's actually very unsupported at that point, because this is actually what gets bolted to the front subframe. So I wanted to ensure that was a super solid fix. Yeah, you're gonna, if somebody picks this up and looks underneath, that's not gonna look the greatest. It's not gonna be quite as realistic as it could be, but realistically, this thing probably shouldn't be picked up and looked at from that perspective. So anyways, there it is. One thing, this top frame is just fit in there. It's not glued or soldered in, and I won't solder it in, I decided. I think it's just going to be easier all the way around to leave that unattached, get everything assembled that needs to be assembled before it goes in, then get it in. I might solder it after I get other stuff done. That just means doing a bit of touch-up painting. At least solder these 2 joints, and maybe the front ones where it attaches to the bulkhead. We'll see. You can't really see any of these joints once everything's together. Like, you saw how tight, there's not much left to look at of the interior once this is on. You can see a bit of the engine. You look at it at an angle, of course, you're going to see sort of in there. This is sitting there. You're going to see inside there, so you will be able to see the inside of the body. But nothing's, everything that's down in there is not super visible. So, yeah. It's coming along pretty good, I think. Once I sign off from here, I'm going to get this all back together, actually, that I just took apart, and start actually, no, the next thing I need to do is build the tank. Let's get that out of there. So this is the parts for the fuel tank. Like I say, it's the entire back of the vehicle. It's going to pretty much fill up this. So that'll be interesting, and that'll be critical to see how that fits. So hopefully that goes well. So I got to get it built before I really do anything more with the body. Get the radiator built. Radiator is straightforward. It's just 2 pieces, really. Get it. I'll solder it together. I'll probably polish it and then spray it with some brassy looking color. It'll make it look like it's polished brass, so that'll look good when it's done. And you can see it's actually good because you can see it sticks out from the it sits out like this, so you see a bit of it. You don't see it all, I don't think. I think it sits in around there. So you'll see this front half. So that'll be good. So anyways, yeah, that's where I'm going to go next, is assembling this, which I think we noted during the inspection of all the parts that it's going to be a bit of a task. I think there's a lot of bent parts in here, and there's a whole lot of not angles, but contours that all have to match up, so it'll be a bit of work, but I'm going to have to do it now. You know, I think if you don't go through this process, you're gambling, right? Like if you build something wrong, or it just doesn't quite line up, or whatever the case may be, if that's just the way it is, and there's interference with the body, you know, and you've already got all this done and painted and detailed, then, you know, you don't want to be in that situation. So I find it best to, you know, start building up what you can, dry assembling what you can, even if you have to super glue things together at this point, you know, a bit of acetone or debonder, and you can get it apart again, if needed to. Like that's what I've done on my 917. Everything on the body is glued together right now, which I'll then have to take apart to paint it and to do the final assembly. So anyways, more to come. I will check back in after and probably show you. Maybe I'll do a little bit of a montage of me working on the fuel tank, and we'll see you later. Thanks. Bye. All right. So I'd check in, show you where my progress I've made so far. I've got the fuel tank fit. I got the radiator fit. Body's all fitting around it fairly well. I do have one issue I need to solve. I still haven't got this quite right. I know what the actual issue is. I just need to remove a bit of material along the back side here, because it's not allowing it to go forward quite enough. Probably, I don't know, a millimeter I need to remove. And these are just dry fit there. And that should get the rear section fitting okay. Like as you can see right now, there's just a little bit of a gap. And if I push it forward, it goes away, but that's I don't want that. I want it so it'll just fit in of its own, so you're not really forcing anything. So it is hitting that a little bit. I got to fix that. The other issue I have is, I don't know if we can see it here. Let's try zooming in just a bit. There we go. As you can see that the tank filler area is not concentric. I don't know if I'll be able to solve that entirely, but you know, it's a little bit on the fit of this body. There's really not much locating it to the chassis itself, just that bottom pan. That's it. You know, so if I just twist the body, you can see that it does line up there. I think I'm probably focusing on my hand here. Let's see if we can get that to focus a bit better over there. So I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do to solve that problem. I think it'll just be careful alignment when you assemble the body to the frame to ensure that everything's on the same center line. You know, the fore aft variants, really I don't know what I can do about that. The tank is where it's supposed to be. It can't come any farther forward. I actually had some interference that I had to clearance on the inside of this piece of it. I'd sand a little bit away, more on one side than the other, and that could be an indication of this being a little bit warped. So anyways, I got to investigate that a little bit more. Everything else is done though. Let's just pull the tape off here and break this down a bit and show you the pieces that we've assembled. You know, so there's the rear section comes off. Here's the tank assembly. It's also got another rear part that goes on right here. We can get it to line up. Of course, this will just pop on. like that. That doesn't interfere with anything. I've already determined that, so I don't want to attach it yet. I want to finish some joints before I get that on. So I've left it loose. So anyways, there's that. And at the front, I got the radiator is fitted in here. And absolutely no clearance issues there at all. There's tons of space all around it, so that's going to be a non-issue. Let's just get the nose cone off. There's that off. Yeah, so there's basically, I think, everything that could potentially pose alignment issues at final assembly is built up, either permanently or temporarily, with the body fit, and with some minor correction needed on the back piece still to get it to fully fit, and maybe tweak the alignment of the tank a little bit. That's it. Now I can kind of go back to the beginning, and that's it. I might do a bit of body work and show you a little bit of that, but more than likely I'm going to leave the body for now and may go work progressively through the instructions from step one. We'll see. I'm not quite sure right now. It would be advantageous for me to carry on with the body work and at least get it roughed in, ready for finishing, because that's where I'm at with my 917, so I could kind of do them both at the same time. And I don't really like that stage too much. It's not my favorite part, especially the rough body work. It's messy, but it needs to be done. Anyways, let's I'll figure out where I'm going to go with that. So here is that tank. Let's get everything else out of the way and let's talk about this thing. This was a bit of a chore. I didn't get any footage of me building this. This comprises of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces in total. Of course, none of these were in the shape that they were meant to be in. Everything was bent, misaligned. So it was a lot of work. It was a little frustrating, actually. But we got there in the end. I think the approach I took was probably not the best. I started by, I'm just trying to think my exact approach. I think I started by tacking this top piece to this piece, or attempting to. I was having a hard time right here. I got to do a bit of, it's looking a little ugly right now, which wasn't actually that successful. I was trying to do it from the inside. I tried to do most of my soldering from the inside when possible, and then if it's got an external joint, I'll flow the solder. Like I'll apply most of the solder on the inside and then flow it through to the outside to totally fill the joint and to bring some solder filler material to the outside so that you can work it and clean up the joint and make it disappear. Anyways, so just because everything was so badly misaligned, it was really difficult, and I essentially had to try to form it as I built it, because like if I reworked the shape, especially these side pieces here, I don't know if you can see, along here is where it joins this piece and this piece. Like if I got this contour correct, right, the side contour, that curve that way, if I got that correct to basically solder those two together, then it was really difficult to get this profile, this face contoured properly to sit with this. So it was a bit of a struggle, and I'm not sure, I might have this piece not quite clocked properly, and that might be part of my problem with the alignment of the fuel filler, is this might not be exactly in the right orientation. It might be holding a bit off. And the way this mounts is this sits inside a cradle on the front of the chassis here. So that is what keeps the orientation of the whole thing, is this line. So if that's going to be level. If this is off, it's going to pull this one way or the other. And then it sits on 2 pins at the back. And then it sits down on those 2 bars that protruded out of the back of the chassis. So that's what locates it. So it's a little ambiguous to locate this on the chassis and do it correctly. Now, if you can kind of see there, I got a bit of a gap, right? And I just could not close this and get it even. So I don't know if I've introduced this problem. There's a potential for that. You know, on here and here, it does look rather even side to side. So I'm not sure. I don't think so. But this overhang and this overhang look about the same. It's a little bit off on the bottom, which potentially could have, you know, an impact on the bottom mounting part, but it doesn't. Like when I got this sitting in the chassis and it's a cradle flat, these 2 pins engage the same amount. So I think that this piece is just misshapen. Uneven material. It's not the same. It's not symmetrical. So anyways, I will fiddle with it some more to get it to hopefully fit a little bit better. Like this back piece fits just fine in the aperture that was created. So, you know, and all the other, here's the other joint is right here, right here. So, and they were fine. They were all tight. These joints were tight. This joint I got fairly tight. This one I got tight. So why this one's a little wonky, has gaps in it, and the back one doesn't. Yeah, it's kind of hard to see where you go wrong on stuff like this. But anyways, I think I got it fairly close. So despite there being a gap there, I think it's okay. Positively, I can make it, I can tweak it so it'll look good when it's all assembled. You know, the back piece, like I say, this is what the back of the chassis is actually going to bolt to. I'm going to drill a hole in here, run a bolt up through it, and that's what that's the one mounting point for that back piece of resin. So it's kind of critical getting this in the right spot. I won't drill that mounting point out until I get everything perfectly aligned, and then that will just more or less be a locating point. Like I won't, you know, depending on, because it doesn't look like it sits right flush to this, so I don't want to obviously suck it in, otherwise it would deform the resin. So it'll more or less just act as a locating dowel screw. Anyways, that was the tank. That was a bit of work. You know, obviously I've just sort of rough cleaned up these solder joints with a file. They're not perfect yet. They're fairly flat. You know, it looks bad here just because I was using a file which is perfectly flat, so any irregularities any low spots are gonna, you know, remain unsanded. But you know, in reality, there's nothing. Like I can't even feel that with my fingernail. So a little bit of sanding and cleaning up there, and it'll look good. This is going to get painted. It's probably my approach. I don't think I'll leave this bare metal and then just sort of you know, do some oil work on it. I don't think I'll do that with the tank, just because of all the cleanup I have to do. Again, we'll see. It depends on how well I clean these up and how well it turns out. And to get it sort of a uniform finish. I can't, it's obviously too big now to go in the tumbler to do a final clean on it to get rid of, you know, the variation of surface finishes. So, you know, you could polish it, I guess, but I don't want this to be a fully polished component. So we'll see what we do. It'll be a while before we get back to this. It's in a good enough state for the test fit and that we don't really need to mess with it too much more. One other thing I wanted to show before we sign off. I don't know if you remember on one of my previous clips, I talked about the alignment of this piece, and that the fit of this was a little bit off, especially, let's see if we can get right in on it. Especially right here, there was a step created. Everything, it was offset a little bit. So I reworked it to eliminate that step. I got everything into alignment. It kind of pulls it a little bit, but that's fine. With the pin, that'll keep it there. So what I did is I basically, I filled the hole back in that I drilled with a piece of 1.6 mil styrene rod. Super glued that in, then trimmed it off, finished it back down. I realigned it, I remarked my hole, re-drilled over farther so that it holds it into better alignment. The way it was fitting before was the natural alignment, which was obviously, this piece is probably pulled in a little bit, because now when I go to attach it, you can see that you need to pull this out a little bit to get it to fit. So that brings it back to where it should be, versus where the resin has shrunk or has pulled a little bit, has warped a little bit. So anyways, that's fixed. So that'll make cleaning that up way easier, and it'll make getting the hood aligned considerably easier. The hood needs a little work. I don't know if you can see that. But yeah, it needs a little work. Anyways, it's like that on both sides. So, well, good news is it's just a relatively simple shape if you consider compound curve simple. So yeah, it's not bad on this end. We've got a nice arc, a nice curve there. But then this sort of goes off the rails. But you can see where it goes off the rails. It's good to here, and then it's starting to flip up, and it's flattened out along there. Let's see if we can get that to focus. Anyways, you can see that. So it shouldn't actually be too hard to fix. It's just a matter of recurving this and then folding this back down, and it should be fairly close. And once I got it fairly close where it'll sit in the opening, I'll glue it into the opening on the body, and then I'll use coarse sanders to contour it to match the contours of the body and to get the joints flush. Yeah, so a bit more done. It's encouraging. Like I said, I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do next. I'll probably work a little bit more on the body. If that's the case, the next update you'll see will be more on the body. If I decide to put the body aside for now, then I'll get started on the engine, and we'll see the first couple steps. I'm not going to do a step-by-step, blow by blow. Here's me cleaning up parts, gluing them together. I don't think that's my intent here. It's just more of a, my intent is to do a bit of a, anyways, a weekly update on my progress, to show you what I did talk about a little bit, much like I'm doing here. So anyways, we'll see you in the next clip. So there we have it. That's all the dry fit sub-assemblies done that I needed to do to get the body fit up and do any corrective action needed there, which thankfully wasn't a whole lot, just a little bit of fitting around the rear tank, which I don't think I have quite perfect. I still need to fine tune it a little bit. I think that it's the inside of the body is still hitting this in a couple spots. So what I'm going to do to fix that, I haven't done it yet. And I'll probably leave it until I'm ready to get the body painted. And I kind of want this permanently attached to the chassis to do any final correction and fitting. But what I'll do is I'll just get some carbon paper, put it around this so that the carbon is up, and then fit the body, and wherever it's touching, we'll leave a witness mark, and then I can just thin the plastic from the inside, or the resin from the inside. So that'll be fairly straightforward and fairly straightforward and easy. Anyways, yeah, so there we have it. I got, so this front frame assembly, as we talked about. Why is that focusing on the corner? I have no frickin' idea. Got this piece all together. Everything's soldered up here. This is good to go, basically. I'll build the suspension up onto this itself, and yeah, we should be fine. The motor's going to fit in here, no problem. I think I'll just have to leave the flywheel and such off, but it'll just drop straight in, and it fits right onto its motor mounts perfectly. So that the way I approached attaching the motor mounts to this lower pan, I think worked out well, by locating the mounts first on the chassis and then affixing it to here. So that's really good. I'm happy with the way that turned out, so that's good. This middle frame section, or the rear frame section, it also turned out well. It's super solid. Like I say, this top piece is not even like tacked in with any glue or anything. It's just let's see if I can get it apart. It is basically just sitting here on its tabs, which is enough spring that I'm not going to take it apart right now, that it sits there fine. So what I'm probably going to do, I've been thinking about this, is I'll get the transmission built up. I need to have this off to get the transmission installed, because it fits directly, like it mounts to the bottom mounts here, and then this is a top mount of the transmission, right? I don't know if we can see that, but there's a tab right there that mounts on the top. So it's essentially captured in there. You can't get it in after the fact. So that's a no-go. So I'll have to leave the top piece off, get the transmission. And so what I'll probably do is I'll get the lower part painted for the most part. I'll get the transmission installed, and I'll just mask up the transmission in the frame here. Then I'll get this top piece on, and I'll solder the joints. I still want to solder these ones because then I can work them and they won't be seen. And it'll be a stronger connection at the firewall here. And then because I got the transmission masked up, I can then continue to paint the rest of this assembly. So, but I can paint the lower part of it first, leave the upper part unpainted, get the upper section of the frame on, and yeah, I think that will work out quite well. As far as attaching these two components go, I got the fit quite well, so everything's nice and tight. There's two locating pins here that go in, they line up, 4 screws will go in the bottom. The top doesn't really have much. The only thing that it really has is just this just mounts flat against the firewall. I'm not quite sure if I like that. This top rail has pins that go into the firewall, but they don't go into the corresponding tube here. So what I might do is drill these out, cut those pins off, and put some longer brass pins in that will attach it all. And then at the very least, that's a more solid glue point than just a flat surface there to glue on. So that's what I'll end up doing there for final assembly, and that it'll be plenty strong. And then again, we've talked about the tank already. It fits okay. I got to try to figure out, make sure when I do get it fit to the body or to the chassis here, that that the filler neck is, I don't think it's sitting all the way down. It's not. I've got to make sure that what is it? There we go. That this is aligned properly, that it's vertical. I actually think, looking at it now, I've looked at it a little bit, I think the whole thing's sitting a little crooked, which is causing my problem with the body. I think the body is actually straight. It's the tank is a little skew, and that might be why I'm getting a little bit of context, so I need to fiddle with that a little bit more. But that's okay at this point. I just got to there we go, ensure that I don't forget and do some work on that. So anyways, that's it for episode 2. The next episode, I'm just going to do a little bit of the body work. I'm going to get the hood installed on the body, get it straightened out, get it aligned, get it rescribed into the opening, and roughed out, well, ready for primer. So that's what's coming in episode 3. So thanks for sticking with me through this, and stay tuned for more. Take care. Bye-bye.